Hello, and welcome to the Brooklyn Rail's 293rd New Social Environment. I'm Louis Block, the production editor at the Rail, and I have the pleasure and privilege of being your MC today for a conversation between Keltie Ferris and Tom McGlynn. We're also thrilled to have the poet Serena Caffrey here, who will read to close today's program. We start all of our events with two important acknowledgements. The first is that here in Brooklyn, we are on the unceded land and waters of Lenape-Hoking, which still belongs to the Wappinger, Canarsie, Munsee, and Lenni Lenape people of the Delaware Nation and the Shinnecock Indian Nation. The second acknowledgement is that Black Lives Matter. We recognize the legacy of settler colonialism as a part of the many contemporary expressions of white supremacy. We honor those that have lost their lives to this violence. I encourage you all to check the chat for a living document of resources and actions as we do our part in the learning and unlearning required to undo this legacy of injustice. And now to introduce today's guest and host. Known for his mostly large-scale canvases covered with layers of spray paint and hand-painted geometric fields, Keltie Ferris's pixelated backgrounds and atmospheric foregrounds create perceptual depth that allows for multidimensional reading of his work. Characterized by a continuously expanding investigation into painting, his practice considers a multiplanar site for constructed light and shifting space. In his ongoing series of body prints, Ferris uses his own body like a brush, covering it with natural oils and pigments and pressing it against canvas to literalize the relationship of an artist's identity to the work that he or she produces. Keltie Ferris was born in Kentucky in 1977 and currently lives and works in Brooklyn and Woodstock, New York. Tom McGlynn is an artist and writer based in the New York City area. His work is represented in the permanent collections of the Whitney Museum, Museum of Modern Art, and the Cooper Hewitt National Design Museum of the Smithsonian, among other national and international collections. He's an editor-at-large for the Brooklyn Rail, contributing articles and criticisms since 2012. His most recent show of paintings opened in February 2020 at Rick Wester Fine Art in New York. Over to you, Tom.
Thank you, Louis. And I just want to make a mention of my appreciation for the whole team at the Rail for, the seamless technical support. And it's been a real honor for me to, interview these wonderful artists. And today I'm really psyched to interview Keltie Ferris. And we're gonna do a little bit of a journey through the past with some of his early work, and then talk about the current show that is up at Mitchell, Ennis and Nash. When does that close, Keltie?
May 29th, excuse me.
Okay, so there's still plenty of time.
Yeah.
It's an excellent show. I urge everybody to check it out. But if you haven't seen it, you'll get a preview today. So this is your studio in Brooklyn, Keltie?
Yes. Yes.
And do you generally work on the floor like that?
No, this is kind of a, well, first of all, hello, and thank you for having me. And thank you to the Brooklyn Rail for inviting me. I do not normally work on the floor except when I'm making body prints. And this is the setup for making body prints. I work on these platforms so that I can hang body parts off the edge so I can get myself flatter.
Right.
Because when you have anything curvy or knobby to your body, making yourself flat against a piece of paper is actually harder than one would think.
Right.
And also, it's also interesting to start here because this was an attempt to make a piece of work that didn't ever come to fruition, because I was hoping to make these stages into sculptures from the residue of the process, but I never did it. So it's fun to start with like future projects that never happened.
Yeah, the speculative present or past.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe we could take a look at the next slide.
Yeah.
And this is a piece from 2008, Joe Braith.
Jabriath, yeah. So this is going back to this one of my first paintings that I showed out of graduate school. And at this point, I was really interested in using spray paint as a bedazzling tool to make linear bodily forms. And I thought of this, I made a whole host of paintings based off of this drawing, which was like pelvis or skull-like, a lot of bilateral symmetry. And yeah, I could go on, but and a lot of silver, because I was really drawn to silver, which was actually aluminum dust paint. It's something I continue to use pretty frequently.
It's interesting to see the anthropomorphic submerged that early on, like in your work, because it comes out more obviously later, obviously in the body prints.
Oh yeah. That's I mean, this, I was always I very rarely do I have anyone read back to me figurative forms in my abstract paintings. And I've come to accept that people don't see them, but though years ago, I was really interested in that. So.
All right, this is an earlier work. And the next slide, I'm gonna let you pronounce that.
Ragnarok, which is the some sort of Norse myth of the end of days. And similarly, this painting, I was thinking of a jack-o'-lantern like face, and or like just again, a bedazzled, lit up face, kind of like a jack-o'-lantern. And it became a sort of an interesting place for me because people saw a cityscape and saw like a night sky and night lights. And because the spray is so bright and such a burst of color and darkness. And I think also this reliance of the grid to make shapes. And I did realize, I mean, the subject matter to me was a face, but the content was an idea of artificial construction that was made from artificial bright bursts of light, which one could interpret as an urban skylight. Because what else is a more like a lit up artificiality than a city?
Well, maybe we could stay with that idea of the artificial construction.
Yeah.
I was doing some reading. I was reading Yeats' autobiography, and he's talking about Oscar Wilde, and he mentions that essay, "The Truth of Masks," in which Wilde kind of makes the point that the costume can actually be more true than the person wearing the costume. And so, I mean, this is kind of like mask-like.
Yes, very. Yes, thank you. Exactly. Yes,
Yeah.
You're saying it better than I am. And in fact, my very first show, which I have very little documentation of, which was in 2007 in California, in LA, was all masks. Like they all had hidden faces. And I was, at that point, was more interested in like paint as a skin that's covering up a canvas. And I don't know, maybe the blankness of the canvas is the true self. I don't know, but I don't know exactly what I was thinking, but I was interested in masks. And so this sort of jack-o'-lantern is sort of a mask made out of a pumpkin, and there's a fire and a light inside. And paint is like a concealer and a revealer. It's something you apply, and makeup is like, it's very paint-like, and
Right.
All these, and of course, like these constructed, is construction more true or less true? Yeah, these are all the things I was thinking about when I was making this work. And of course, relationship to a gay and trans identity, and closetedness and openness, you know, I just thought paint was like a really fruitful place to meditate on these things.
Yeah, the actual quote, the actual Oscar Wilde quote is that costume is a means of displaying character without description.
Huh.
So if you take that, if we were to extrapolate that into the realm of like painting or decor, which is something you also talked about in a previous interview, decor is a means of display of painting without explanation. So
I didn't say that.
No,
I was gonna say. Yeah.
I made that up, but when you,
okay. I was gonna say someone a lot smarter than me said that, but yeah, okay. Yeah, it's great. That's why I'm surprised I might have said it.
No, but what you said very clearly was that the possibilities of decor, like if we think of decor as a mask, it's like what you said wonderfully is that it's so unclassy and therefore exciting.
Yes, that's much more what I would say. Yeah. Yes. Right. Yeah, unclassy and yet exciting. Yeah. Yeah. I at this point, I was really especially interested in the idea of bedazzlement and brightness, and also sort of a cutting away and revealing the layers.
Huh?
You know, I mean, I could go into like what every mark, the kinds of marks I put together to me connote those things. And I sort of, they like the spray paint, especially used in a dot like maneuver, has, among other things, has this brightness and airiness that is, I don't know, I was using it in a sort of like confetti bedazzlement kind of ways in these particular paintings. And then there's like this like taping and like this the strenuousness of the grid, which I make from a palette knife.
Right.
So the palette knife to me kind of connotes like a working, I don't know, like a working class like aesthetic of painting, like not working class, like a job. It's like a job to like cover a fence, or it's a job to build a wall.
Right.
And that's what I was doing, is building a wall and bedazzling it and peeling it off. And so it had these opposite, I don't know. And that's one thing I'm interested in, is using opposites within one painting, like opposite connotations butting up against each other to create some sort of, I don't know. I don't want to say decor, but because I don't want my paintings to be decor, but I do want them to reference the beauty of a lot of visual things when some of those things, and some of those things are decor.
Right. Yeah. And I don't want to put too fine a point on decor, because it's taboo to think of like your life's work as just decor, But it's also an interesting place, like you said. It's a kind of a interesting place to flirt with.
Yeah, I mean, I worked for an architectural ornamenter for a few years, and I did think a lot about like spatial complexity that comes out of like architectural ornament. And that's very like antithetical to what I do now and antithetical to modernism, but there's a liveliness to a certain kind of complexity.
Yes.
Visual complexity that and sometimes that is seen as unclassy. I don't know, and I'm interested in that kind of revulsion that sometimes we have over like flower patterns or what have you.
Right.
I mean, we're getting very far from this painting, but I that's okay for me, as long as you're following or everyone else is following.
Totally, yeah. And I'm not going to make you explain everything, because that's kind of like not the point, right?
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
Can we go to the next painting? Oh, okay, so this is my interjection here. So this is a 1942 image of Jackson Pollock's stenographic figure when he was just kind of getting going with his automatic writing. But you can still see like there's a foreground and background. But I thought of it with regards to your work because you have developed, like you just explained, a kind of shorthand with your palette knife and with the tools of the palette knife and the spray paint. So, I mean, I'm kind of literalizing it here a little bit because it's, it's stenographic shorthand, but the layering here, I thought, like, with the language and the language moving into just gesture, I thought was relevant to your work. And also the fact that there is this figure-ground relationship. It's very shallow, but it's not like severely flat.
Right. No, I am interested. Yes. Also, at this point in my work, I was often thinking about like theatrical, like a theatrical kind of space, sort of a very a space that has depth, like a stage, but I don't know. There's a sort of a fakeness to the feeling of depth,
right?
And yeah, and a lot of still life has that, and a lot of Picasso has this, and of course this is Pollock's Picassoid phase. And I did go through a phase of being really drawn to this time period in Pollock's work, and I can't really explain why, other than the idea of it's interesting. Before he drips, like you can feel the, like, I don't know, it's almost like a buildup of possibility or potential of before this breakthrough. So I've looked at these paintings a lot, not recently.
They're like transitional, they're transitional.
Yeah. Often those transitional moments are really, I don't know, the most exciting.
Yes, I agree. Can we go to the next slide? This one has like a glyph as a title.
Yeah, it has
just some.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how to.
What do you call those things?
Yeah, I don't. They're unpronounceable titles. I had a moment of thinking that no one ever said titles out loud. Because I never talked about my titles, and no one asked me about them. So I started to make them out of punctuation because they were, like, I don't know, fun to make. I don't know, satisfying to make almost another abstraction for a title of another abstraction.
Right.
And like
you don't want to qualify your paintings by making the title too specifically representative.
Yeah, and sort of punctuation alludes to language but isn't language. So I thought that was, and it orders language, it orders written language so that we can comprehend it, and yet it has no specific content. So I thought that was really an interesting thing to do, and I did it for a while, and then it started to cause so many problems. I mean, everyone always like wrote it down wrong, and then when you can't pronounce a title, you realize how often you talk about the titles.
Right.
So, like right now.
But in this painting, you could really see, like this painting you can really see the phosphorescent aspect of the spray paint, like I forgot what the word you called it, but
did you say phosphorus? Yeah,
just like you can see the kind of glow and glimmer of that.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I think this is kind of like where my interest in dots was starting to form into lines, and I did sort of also notice in this series of paintings how I have sort of a tendency towards parallelness or parallel lines and parallel radiations, and sort of like a repetition of mark making, and like how those repetitions can build with each other or build against each other.
Right.
And it's that's still something I'm working on and thinking about now. And And also, I think this was yeah, I'll stop there. I can go on.
It's a very ebullient painting.
Yeah.
Can we take a look at the next slide, please?
Sure.
So this is a Sigmar polka. It's untitled from 1999. And, you know, besides the tools that you're using, I also kind of wanted to talk about like how artists use devices to kind of, you know, there's a distance between them and the painting, that they establish these tools to create this kind of distance in the process. So there's a distancing, you know, and these were called like, you know, as polka dots, but there is a similarity in terms of just the dots.
Yeah.
And, you know, when I did a review of an Otto Penne show recently at Speroni Westwater, and he used a lot of dots too. And you know, he talked about dots and grids in terms of raster representation, or like, you know, basically a grid. And it was interesting because he related his dots to light as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted to show that it's kind of like a historical reference. Maybe we can go to the next slide.
And pointillism, I mean, it goes back to like Seurat.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure it goes earlier than that, but like that's in the Western canon to me. I mean, I've had a moment of like when I started spray painting, I was very, very into polka, and I was more interested, or I was very interested in like I was looking for a gesture or a way of painting that that could carry a gesture but had like an emotional distance, so that the gesture didn't feel overwrought or cheesy or maudlin, or I sometimes have said gooey. And I think like, you know, these, you know, Lichtenstein and polka, like maybe like they're much more ironic painters than I am, but that distance, like, and spray painting, you know, that distance is, I think, really fruitful. And with spray painting, you're literally not touching the canvas, and that, right. and there's like a freeness to that. Like you're literally not slowed down by friction. You literally don't have human touch, so that it feels, I don't know, a little otherworldly. Right.
Well, that's, you know, I guess that was Pollock's big breakthrough. Yeah, he didn't touch the canvas, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, all these things. So all these, you know, it just seemed really fruitful to me, and I'm still a little addicted to it, I guess.
Another like very energetic painting, and speaking of Seurat, it looks like you're playing with like optical blending with your colors a little bit more here.
Yeah, you know, the sort of, sometimes I have like a little of a silly joke to myself to start a painting or to get it going, and this one I was thinking of a rainbow snake, so it sort of has like these teeth at the end of it, right. And and I wanted it to be like all the colors of the rainbow, but actually it's not. And then it's on top of these pastel lines that are all the pastels in the box, like all 96 colors or whatever's in there. And then I ended up slowly outlining it in red, which became a device for a while.
Right.
But anyway, it's sort of like rainbows and snakes on top of rainbows.
Right. And then I have another slide that's kind of like a little more contemporary reference. The next slide.
Yeah.
So this is just kind of like a key of styles, you know, contemporary styles. That's Howard Hodgkin, Joanne Greenbaum, and another artist using spray paint, Christopher Wool. I don't necessarily think they directly relate to your work, but I kind of wanted to just show them as like a glossary of stylistic tendencies that you kind of combine.
Yeah, totally.
Like totally. With Joanne Greenbaum's work, there's kind of like looks like someone scribbling on the back of like their notebook in school sometimes, yeah. And Christopher Wool has more of like a punk kind of street aesthetic. And then with Howard Hodgkins, you get the same similar, like the brushstroke that's kind of over exemplified by like the one stroke, like the giant brushstroke, like you know, like Lichtenstein's brushstroke. It's like it's a signifier of a brushstroke also.
Yeah.
But these to me were like some things that when I was looking at your work, some like they often combine in your work.
Totally.
But not in a derivative way, just like in terms of like your gesture.
Yeah, I mean, especially Joanne. I mean, I've been looking at her paintings for forever.
Yeah, she's a wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, all of them, but yeah.
Yeah, and the next one is Manuscript. The next slide.
Yeah, that's such an anomalous painting. I kind of don't know what to say about it, other than it's one of my very few paintings from this era that has sort of a black line to it. And I really embrace the blurring potential of spray paint, which is, I don't know, that's sometimes spray paint, or you can sort of like push it towards this like sort of like almost photographic feeling. And I think I did that slightly more here by using black and gray.
Right.
But I'm,
yeah, I was struck by the photographic blur feeling in this one.
right. Yeah.
And the next one is called Cleopatra.
Yeah, that's quite a bit late. That's a few years later. And that's one of the biggest paintings I've done. When I was out in California for a few months, I had a gigantic studio, and I sort of took this sort of like multicolored snake as large as I could take it.
And is this the point where you know, people start to write about your work in terms of referencing like the shark tooth aspect of like a digital realm?
Yeah. People got yeah. And I've, you know, at first I really bristled at that because it just seemed sort of reductive, or and I've come to accept that I probably am responding to, you know, I mean, sometimes I don't even know what people are talking about, because like, to me, like digital reproduction feels like HD, like it feels like hyper exactly real, like there's no blur,
Right.
you know, compared to film and compared to video. So, and I don't use Photoshop, or, you know, I'm a bit of a Luddite. Like there's no like computer planning in these. It's just the grid. It's Pointillism. It's just grids and dots. And so
Right.
that's that, and which is the base of digital digital representation. So, and also this, what I like spray paint's potential to have to feel like a light bright, like literally, like that's
Right.
what I was thinking of. I was thinking of light brights from the 80s.
That's, yeah, that's a generational reference, right?
Yeah, and I was thinking about textiles, also which is essentially the predecessor to digital representation. So so it's kind of like a no but yes was my response, and I've mellowed out about it.
Yeah, there used to be a game called Color Forms, like when I was a kid.
Yeah.
You know, it was like the manipulation of shapes. They were just vinyl and they stuck because of like static electricity. But, you know, something about those formative games, like still, you know, they still have resonance, because, you know, it's like when you're first learning how to move things around visually, you know.
Yeah.
So I relate to that light bright reference. But you know, again, you know, like one can think about the computer as a device and it's like a distancing thing. And I agree. I think that your work isn't really representational of like the digital, like some other artists. Like someone like Wade Guyton might be more like, you know, along those lines. And
he's actually using a printer, so he's actually using a computer. So like it's kind of like a whole other level of engagement with it. I guess that's where I balk at at talking about them as digitals, because then many people think I like, I've designed these in Photoshop or something, or that they come from like a history of working in Photoshop. And
Right.
I barely know how to like save a file
Right.
or send a file, as we discovered this week. Like, so I don't know, like, however, you know, it is 2021 and we are looking mostly at computers. Like,
Right.
you know, we're on a computer right now. It's not like, so I know I am engaged and thinking about this in many ways.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting in terms of the figuration, but I would also like really love to talk about the color, because the color is it's so high key and
Yeah.
and vital. You know, it's such a vital palette. I mean, I work with color myself in my own work, and the palette here is like, you're really juggling a lot of balls in the air.
Yeah. I mean, you know, at the time I was looking at Matisse's, like, you know, joie de vivre paintings, and the, you know, the people, you know, the paintings of the people frolicking naked
Right.
in the landscape, and playing instruments. And, you know, like I was really drawn to like the large idyllic landscapes, and I thought of these this sort of snake-like form as like a reclining figure.
Right.
And I know that no one, I mean, this is sort of silly to talk about in this way, because I know that it's an abstraction and I know that no one is going to read it that way. However, it's part of the motivation to make it, I guess. So
Right.
in retrospect, years later, I don't mind admitting that that's what I was thinking of. And so that's a lot where the color comes from. Sort of like immensity of the color of nature plus like a sense of utopia. Or
I could definitely see like the Fauvist influence, which is like
totally.
that color is so like psychedelic, you know.
Yeah.
Can we go to the next slide?
Yeah, this is a similar painting. I mean, it's like made at the same time. They're both really big, like 96 inches by, I think, 10 feet. I think it's 8 by 10 feet. And yeah, I call this waves with a lot of parentheses involved, that I think it's parentheses that make it look more like a wave. And yeah, I don't know what else to say other than it's the sibling to the previous painting. It comes from a lot of the same desires and formats and influences.
But it also has, it foregrounds these marks, as it, you know, like in the Howard Hodgkin, where it's talking about the brushstroke as an index.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and it's a deeper space too. It feels like a deeper space because of that.
Totally. Yeah, it's true. I haven't done a lot of that. These big blocky marks. So they're, you know, I don't know, they're like that big, more or less.
Right.
And it did feel, yeah, that's a good point. I never thought of the Howard Hodgkin's reference to that, but I like that.
Well, he has this weird gesture also.
Yeah.
He uses like, it looks like he uses like cotton balls or something, or he did.
Yeah.
So there's a kind of a dotting thing there too. Can we go to the next slide?
Yeah, so this is made at the same time as these like bigger paintings, and oh no, this is before the bigger. No, oh gosh, I can't decide. No, this is before, right? And this is like from my
2015.
It's 2015, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's the same time. I'm sorry. Yeah, and this is, I don't know, it's interesting. Like I often have like a smaller, more intimate painting practice going alongside like a bigger, more gestural practice. And this painting, you know, some of those earlier snake paintings I started painting around this spray paint, these large spray paint forms with a brush in this like little blocky way. It was usually red. And then I started I was like, what if I like break up the spray paint into like a celestial nature, like stars, and draw with these different colors of dots. And then I paint the ground around it. And then I wanted to like leave like a residue of like the underpainting as like also as something passing through the other marks. And that's actually something, I mean, there's so many things that, you know, to be interested in. Like one thing I'm interested in general is the idea of marks, one kind of mark or one kind of thing passing through another thing. I read as a child, you know, I read about how two galaxies can pass through each other without, and it takes billions of years, and a single star, there's no collisions of stars or planets, they just pass through each other.
Right.
And that idea of like, you know, maybe sound waves pass through you, or I don't know if internet, you know, I know like I said, I don't know how the internet works, magic, but like things are passing through us and we remain intact. So I'm thinking of like lots of different marks passing, or like coexisting in the same space, making several different drawings or forms.
Right. Yeah, I'm not
it's kind of like, and so that they all have all these things, this is called Orion with
right.
and it's all these paintings have what do you, cosmology names. You know, what is it when you see a picture in the sky that it's
the cosmology is good.
Yeah, you see what Orion is an example of one. Anyway, constellation, thank you.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so they're all constellation titles, and yeah.
And Orion is that very, very unique constellation that they kind of line up like three dots.
Yeah, his belt. Well, I guess, I mean, he has a really nice visible belt, so he's
right. Orion's belt, right? But it kind of lines up, and it's and you talked about kind of like your tendency towards like these things making lines too.
Correct.
I mean, I don't want to overstate that too much.
I know. These are just things. I mean, it's like it's an abstract painting. Like, it's not a picture of a guy standing on his head, but
right.
It is, or it was for a moment, and now it isn't that anymore because that's not legible, and that's not what I need for people to read. It's but these are part of the motive. It's sort of like, is it the motivation of the painting, or is it the subject matter? I'm not sure actually.
Well, the next image is from an Aboriginal painter named Bill, with the wonderful name of Bill Whiskey Chapoljari. And it's called Rock Holes Near the Olgas. And, you know, just on the surface, it's using dots like you do, but you know, talking about abstract painting like you are, you know, if we think about sensibilities that aren't like just linear or you know, representational. There's this great quote by Barnett Newman. He talks about encountering the mounds, the mounds in Ohio, what he visited with his wife in 1948 or something like that. And he said, it's not about space, it's about time. And so like, if we start to think about the dimensions of abstract painting, not just in terms of like space, but also include that dimension of time, it kind of goes back to what you're talking about, how things pass through one another. And like, it's more of like, it's more of like a physics of painting rather than like, you know, like how painting looks like something.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I like that.
Yeah,
that's a beautiful painting.
Yeah, it's a wonderful one.
Yeah.
And these would also like sometimes serve as maps. So these might be like water holes, you know, and so they were necessary. They were tools also, you know. Anyway, The next slide is called Sun K Sun. Is that correct?
It's called Sun Kiss Sun.
Sun K Sun.
Sun. I don't remember what the title is, and Sun. Oh, Sunk Sun. Sunk Sun.
Okay.
Yeah, but the K is
Right. It's big.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
And this is 2016.
Yeah. I mean, who doesn't love a good sunset painting? And and I love sunsets as a phenomenon. I mean, if I could see the sunset every day, I'd be happy to.
Right.
And this is one of the first paintings where I got really into these erasure marks, and that's what create these sort of like highlight moments, and and they were all vertical. Also, sort of applied the sunkenness of a sun, or sunkenness, sort of going down motion, and then the K. There seems to be lots of K, or at least like some. I don't know. I saw K's in here, and my name begins with K, and I don't know. Those are the disjointed thoughts that motivated that. And also, I think that this is around the time when I was starting to think. I mean, I was starting to think of like less in dots and more about just like. I was like, I like color. I like soft edges. I can use spray paint to make big blocks of color. Like I don't have to be ashamed. I don't know. There's these things that you're sort of ashamed of as a painter sometimes, and you sort of like slowly reveal them. That I mean, I'm talking to the third person as if I'm not talking about myself, but like, which is just shows how, I don't know, embarrassing it all is. But you're like, but I don't know, sort of. I've always been a little embarrassed by how much I love color, and I feel like I'm always holding back slightly. And so this is one of those moments where I'm like, oh, I can just put out these like greens and purples and oranges as soft edges, and build a painting from there. So.
Well, looking at some of your previous interviews, you're really articulate about the connotative aspect of how one gets to like in a painting, like the connotative thinking. It's really, it's not linear. I mean, there's so many different influences. And also I can make a comment about like a sunset being also like taboo,
Yeah.
Like beauty or a sunset can be like a taboo, like decor can be taboo.
Yeah, right.
So like,
and then anyone can go look at a sunset. Like, why do you need an artist to point you to a sunset? Like, one could argue. I mean, it's like who doesn't already think a sunset is beautiful? But then you're like, I want to make something like 1/50th as beautiful as a sunset. Like, it is an awe-inspiring, beautiful, incredible experience that we all deal with, or all experience. And you would hope that art could hold a candle to that. I don't know.
Yeah, and also like, why not? It's like, go for it. It's like,
like aim high,
right.
And also aim low.
Exactly. Yeah, it's unclassy. It's unclassy, like you said. I love that. I love that aspect. Can we go to the next slide?
Sure.
So this is interesting. This one here, because it starts to reintroduce that idea of like drawing on the computer. And I know that like in the past, like, you said today, you felt like it might be reductive and people are overstating that aspect of your work. But I wanted to talk about it in terms of immediacy versus hypermediacy. So like hypermediacy is when the artist kind of exposes the tools, and there's a form of transparency with hypermediacy where it's more sincere. And then like when we're talking about like immediacy in painting, the artist will kind of conceal their methods. Let's say like in traditional academic painting, like realist painting. So it kind of it turns that whole idea of an immediacy on its head in terms of being insincere.
I like that.
Yeah. But
I like that a lot.
Yeah. So Yeah, so this painting for me feels like it's processed through like a hypermediacy, which feels very sincere,
Right.
rather than being like the art in the age of mechanical reproduction or something like that.
Totally. I mean, this is also another, things passing through paint through other things. Like I thought of it, what I painted, I mean, there's a gray ground underneath. It's sort of like a middle graphite and aluminum ground that actually a lot of my paintings are painted on top of. And then I painted these, I spray painted these loops. And then I slowly painted in this background, which was mostly white, and also these sort of like concentric circles that kind of make a target. So I was thinking of like there being a target embedded inside these sort of graffiti surrealist swirls. So it's to me, it's like two things operating in the same space, but and which is a lot of it's like figure ground games. It's like the ground operates as a figure as well. Right. I decided to just keep that brush mark really square, with like, and really I don't know. I guess it is like to show the brush mark, and it's as it's like an impressionist move, and I like that idea though, of like a painting that shows how it's made, or the irony of it though is like I've had people like looking at this painting and looking at the brush parts and being like, I don't know what you call this digital bit here or something. And I'm like, it's a brush. Right. This is like a brush mark. So it has caused these like really confusing conversations. But what you're saying is really much closer to my intention. Like you're saying it way better than I could. So maybe I should just.
Well, it's like, Jasper Johns would call some of his paintings painting with device. And, he actually has a painting that says liar, So he's kind of like being very transparent about the fact that he arrived at the painting through like a process of like, an artificial kind of process.
Right.
But
and obviously a target is a reference to Jasper Johns. I mean, 100%. FYI. I mean, just that's obvious, I think. But so I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
no, you didn't. This is your forum, Keltie.
Thank you, but I think it's our forum. But okay. But you were saying like this idea of like lying or telling the truth is really confusing in painting, because what seems to be the most straightforward thing sometimes comes off as a lie, or is read as a lie. But I am really interested in sort of laying things out as straightforwardly or as honestly as I can.
Yeah, and also, one can think about like the painter as just like a human processing organism, like an organic processing organism, and like the painter is like a poetic remediator, somewhere between the hypermediated and the immediate. Yeah. It might seem like a privileged position, but I think that's where the free play happens. Right. And I see that in your work. I mean, it's so obvious in your work, or maybe not so obvious.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in like not only toggling between opposites, but like putting opposites next to each other and I don't know, seeing what happens, I guess. And so, yeah.
So the next slide is a couple of artists who they're much more self-consciously using the machine. This is Jeff Elrod, called The Tropics from 2015, and Jacqueline Humphreys, which also has an unpronounceable name, from 2017. And they're obviously using the machine. And so I think it's I think I included these just in terms of the difference of intent between your work. You know, like if your work gets reduced to that, there's definitely a different intent. You know, and Fong interviewed Jeff recently for the Rail, and they were talking about how vector and raster space can become a space of transference in like a painting. So again, like the painter becomes like the poetic remediator. And so these are a little more ironic, I think, and directly representational of a reference to like contemporary culture, because they literally are using the machine to be made. And I think I just wanted to make a difference. I mean, yeah. It's in the air, but I don't think that your work could be reduced this way. But even though these are wonderful paintings, you know.
Yeah, they are wonderful paintings. I mean, one could say that theirs are clearer or something. Like, yeah, I don't know if I have anything to add to that. I really, yeah.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to include them in terms of an example of relief,
yeah,
or an opposite, or kind of an opposite.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the next one is, we're getting closer to the show now. Love Wave.
Yeah, this was from my show 3 years ago at Mitchell Innes. Then in this body of work, I kind of in some ways took a sharp turn in that instead of sort of investing in sort of this softness of edges, I was thinking about what if line, softness of edges and color and things passing through each other. I was like, what if I accepted line as this container form that constrained and produced color, and color literally became sculptural and was carved by the line. And I was like, it was, and I still have trouble talking about this work, and I'm like where it came from, like because it is sort of a sudden veer in another direction, but it did captivate me for like a good 3 or 4 years. And I don't know, I can't remember if we have a detail in here or not, but
yeah, we do. We can go to the next slide.
Yeah, it was also like about what's I guess in opposition to the lightness and airiness of spray paint, to have paint acting like an object or a sculptural form, and can color be sculptural?
Right.
And then I kind of always planned to break out of the coloring book format of these more than I did, but it did kind of become about the tyranny of this line, and and so they're on these gray grounds that are supposed to mimic newspaper cartoons, and the black line, the black line is a graphite line, and I'm really interested in graphite as a dark color, and then it also became about these the erasures are some in these paintings are something I'm really they became this grid, so I would draw this drawing and then I would erase it and then paint in the color, and these erasures became I don't know, one of the biggest characters. And that, I don't know, I'm still really thinking about that a lot, as and some of an old idea, but erasure as a mark, and how you can't, you can erase in painting, but it's very hard to completely erase. And and how that sort of, that going backwards is always actually going forwards.
I find it fascinating how you're capable of maintaining like multiple planes, and there's these beautiful transitions like in the detail, but they still maintain, like, yeah, so there's a beautiful transition there with the erasure, and it's entering the, you know, the circumscribed lines of the cartoon colors, like you mentioned, but when you look at them large, you're maintaining like these multiple levels, like almost discreetly at the same time that they're interacting.
Correct. Yeah.
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 I think the next one is from 2018 also. This is called Relief. This is in the same series?
Yeah, this was the one, yeah, it's the same series. The one, the Love Wave, was in my show Mitchell and Miss Nash, and then this was in my show in LA. And I started framing all of these works and making the frames. By this, in between these two paintings, I moved full time to Woodstock, and have all this outdoor space. And so we started framing. These paintings were becoming like reliefs and sculptural. And this painting is actually two canvases, one on top of the other, in addition.
I think the next slide shows that. Let's see that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a big painting. Like, this is 90, maybe 100 inches tall. I can't remember exactly, but my assistant builds the frames. We put them in, I paint them, and it sort of became a part of the painting. And I'm still making those frames, even though these were really more necessary for these three-dimensional paintings.
Maybe maybe we can jump to Keltie's body prints, which is like slide 24. I'm just going to jump because the intervening paintings are similar. I don't want to. I also want to keep track of time here.
Yeah.
So this is a work from 2013-14, powder pigment on paper.
Mm-hmm.
So this is, I wanted to cover this because I know it's a significant part of your practice, that when you work with body prints, and so just wanted to, cover that,
Yeah.
Because the very first slide, you did talk about like an anthropomorphic kind of impulse.
Yeah, although I do think that it comes from I don't know. I think it comes from a different place. I mean, it comes from one, thinking of touch and lack of touch in a painting, and like, what is an indexical mark, and who is the painter, and where are they now, and where do they grow up, and like all these like biographical, people, you start with like the mark, and then you move outward to like these questions of who this person is, and also the idea of touching a work versus not touching a work.
Right.
And spray paint was like the ultimate mark of that has no touch, and then this is the mark that is all touch. I tried to make these after I saw a Jasper Johns graphite show, at the Met. I don't know what year that was, but 2009, I think. And then I saw a Hammond's piece for the first time of these, and I ran home, and I finally figured out that they were doing the same thing, and I went home to make my version of it, and didn't really have the intention of showing them, but ended up doing this little show of them that you're seeing there at Chapter in Chapter New York in 2013, I think. And
the next slide shows one of those David Hammond's body prints, which, they weren't that well known until the current show because it's early work. That's David Hammond's on the right. It's
Yeah.
Susan Weil and Rauschenberg on the left, and then Kiki Smith, which not exactly a body print, but
Yeah.
that idea of making the body kind of operate in a two-dimensional plane.
Yeah, is that of her or not?
It's a photogravure of her. Yeah.
Her, yeah. Yeah, I think that's an important part to this, that like I'm not, they're not Kleinsian, and that I'm not like getting a bunch of hot dancers to do this for me. Like it's autobiographical, and
Right.
it's like, and it's my body with its positives and negatives, and
Right.
to me it's like I don't know, like a factual trace slash depiction of like me, the artist in the studio.
Can we go to 27? Oh, this is 26? Is this triple Elvis? Is that what that is?
Yeah.
And so there's an obvious reference to the Warhol, right?
Yeah, they kind of became more Warholian as they got more colorful. This one is not on a colored ground. It's just it's actually just a ton of pigment that I like slowly pressed into the paper. And then, so just to be clear, like how these work, and I sort of cover myself with, and in this case, while clothed, like in a oil, and then I do like a bunch of push-ups essentially on a piece of paper that's on the ground, and then I drizzle pigment over this, and then the pigment sticks to where the oil is. And the only two people I know of who have done this, I don't know, particular method is Jasper Johns and David Hammonds. I'm sure or have done it, in a long-term serious way. And like the obvious difference of like of us, I thought I could relate to that and still make something different, because we have very different bodies,
right,
and different histories. Yeah, and then as they got more colorful, and I also became more interested in like sort of a repetition as again, like the repetition of a mark, which is my body, but it's always different, and some things are revealed and some things aren't revealed, and clothing is always different, but it's always the same.
Right. There's like in the next slide, there's your clothed and unclothed.
Yeah.
In this one.
Right.
And then there's also some marks in the background, like in your paintings.
Yeah, that's true. This is a very short. Yeah, it's a very good point. I sort of forgot about that. Yeah, I sort of did the body prints on top of some like abstract, right, geometric like watercolor forms.
Right. And then the next couple of slides are also from your body print series. This one, I thought this is interesting because the one on the right, like the body starts to kind of break up.
Right.
And then in the next slide, we have kind of like an array of, this to me feels very Warholian in the sense of kind of like maybe his shadow series,
Yes. Yeah. I was thinking of Warhol, and also the soup cans, and just
right,
like and the shadow series, just like this. Sense of like repetition and variance, and I don't know.
Well, what's interesting, I think, in those pieces, those serial pieces of Warhol's, is you start to see his palette. Like you start to see his palette writ large, and
right.
To some extent, that's happening here too.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
And then I think we're at the show now. So this is a brand new painting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is called Landscape this is from the current show at Mitchell, Ennis and Nash. And you have painted the frame for this as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So now all the works in this show are framed as well. And this painting is made using this I don't know, that pretty new way of working for me, which is this background. I've been painting watercolors onto big sheets of paper and canvas and printing them over onto the canvas, and it feels like the body prints. It's like it's on the ground, and it's sort of, you know, and also the body prints have like a sense of like, you feel like you're working blind because you can't see what you're doing,
Right.
and you're just pressing on the floor. So this has a very similar feel to that. But in this case, I built up this sort of orange and yellow ground, and ended up spray painting green all over the place. And then, you know, I can't, and to me, it was like about accepting this is much higher key color than even most of my paintings, because this watercolor is not classic. It's not cadmium like everything else I've done. It's even brighter. I don't know, I have trouble talking about this because this is like where I'm at right now, and it's like, this painting is called Landscape. It clearly refers to a landscape, especially with like the blueness of the blue and green.
Right.
I don't know.
I think it's probably harder to talk about work you've just done, right?
It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah. It really is.
I
mean, I'm willing to like, you know, try. Like,
Thank you. And then
but don't hate me if I fail here.
don't worry. The next one has a wonderful title called Polyplatony, which
The polyplatonics.
Polyplatonics. I love that.
Thank you.
That's like, it's so anti-reductive, or it's like so like, you know, it's like, it's really funny. It's a very funny title.
Yeah. I mean, this one I can talk about more easily. Like, it's, you know, this is like referring to like the digital read of my paintings, and like trying to make linear forms out of this like sort of silly notion of what the digital is. So I have a few times, like I've made paintings that are actually references to the misreads of my work. And I actually find that those misreads, you know, especially if that many people have the same misreading, it's obviously like a very valid reading, and obviously a very informed, important reading. So like, it helps me to meditate on it. And I'm like, well, okay, if they're thinking about digitals or digital paintings, or a painting made out of little squares, like what would that be exactly? And so I tried to make loopy curved lines out of little squares.
It reminds me of that anecdote. I think it was de Kooning said about Jasper Johns that he could paint it like a Ballantine can and sell it, and then like Jasper Johns like does that, you know. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the next one is called Feelings, with a lot of E's.
This is not feelings. This is streams.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
But this has the relief aspect of some of the.
Yeah. Yeah. This was my last relief painting. I mean, I may do more, but this is the direction that the relief paintings are and we're going, which is to like really intense color, sort of away from the like black, I don't know, drawing as black and white, you know.
And the next one's Feelings.
Yeah. And this is like
so complex.
Yeah, and this is made from this like this printing process of smaller pieces of paper with this watercolor sort of like building up all over it. And that's why certain areas are pink and certain areas are yellow. And this was the first painting that I made in this way, and I'm really happy with it. I don't know. This is like there's like a wanderingness of this last year that comes somewhat from the pandemic, and I don't know, the hyper isolation of this moment. I can't, makes it even harder to talk about because I haven't talked about it to anyone. because I'm, you know, we're just here in the woods by ourselves. So
I think we can relate to that, you know.
yeah, we're all in the same situation. I mean, it's to some degree, but
maybe we can jump to 36, because I wanted to talk a little bit about your. Actually, I'm sorry. I wanted to talk about your drawings because, yeah, maybe that one, 37. So this is this sounds?
yeah.
Yeah. And in this I wanted to get to the drawings because they're really kind of a big part of the present show, and they really show that they really show your kind of vocabulary of gestures in a more graphic way without the color, and they're very complex, and they seem like something very new.
Well, yeah, except, you know, the last show, you know, or the last 3 or 4 years, my paintings have been very drawing based. You know, the relief works were coming out of this sort of fluid line that is something that spray paint was, you know, painting with spray paint almost naturally does. You know how like most of graffiti has this very, I don't know, a certain kind of curve to it.
Right.
So in a way, I've been doing that, and then also my last show had 3 drawings on paper that. So it's been there, and I've been doing them, and then I at one point in the pandemic, I was like, you know, I make these drawings and I don't, you know, and I put them in a drawer, and no one takes, I don't know, like, not no one takes them seriously, but I don't take them seriously because I put them in a drawer or something. And so I'm like, why can't I give a drawing the same respect that I would give a painting? Just you know, and so I decided to just do it on canvas, on panel, and frame it. And this is what came of it, and it became this really like meaningful outlet during this bizarre time. And again, it's about about repetition and fluidity, and I don't think you can really see this in this reproduction, but there's a lot more erasure to this than you can tell. Like it's really a drawing with another drawing and erasure on top. So it's like 2 conflicting like basic mediums, just a pencil and eraser going against each other and with each other. And to me, it references water and sound and waves.
And there's that, can we look at that Leonardo? I forget what slide that is. Yeah, it's 38, yeah. So this is a Leonardo drawing called The Deluge. He did this whole series of deluge drawings, which, you know, they're typically seen as a little more abstract for his oath, and also kind of apocalyptic. So, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm making too much of a connection, but maybe there's aspects of the drawing during the pandemic that feel that way a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there was something about like the isolation of the moment was like, it was good to turn to drawing, and something, and like less decisions. Like I found decisions during these times of angst harder than I normally do. So like boiling it down to fewer parts,
right?
Like no color, no, and then so, and I was thinking of like old engravings of clouds.
Yeah.
You know?
One of my favorite parts of the Met is that part where they're just a print gallery, where you can see all the syntax of the printmaking and like the intense, like, you know, gravure and dry point and stuff like that. Can we take a look at the last slide, which is the installation shot, which has this incredible wall drawing called Ecstatic Being. Is that the title? Is that correct title?
It's ecstatic being ecstatic.
Okay.
To be exact.
And this really does not come across in the slide, unfortunately, but here you have
can you show the one without it? Like
oh yes, yeah. So that's our earlier one.
I mean, this is the same wall, just without the column and without the paintings on top of it.
Right.
So that is a piece, you know, that's ecstatic being ecstatic.
Right. And then it is kind of like a real radical move to hang the paintings on, like, because the paintings for me, like in this context, they do become theatrical. Like the whole situation for me becomes like a theatrical situation.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like the
Yeah.
paintings are players on the stage. And then you have the polychromed frames, and the one on the right is it's like a spectrum, you know, which again is kind of like a standard device. Jasper Johns would use a spectrum like that, kind of like as like a generic device, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, I mean, the end of, for me, that was kind of like the crescendo of the show. And it pointed to this really interesting, for me personally, to this interesting place, like jumping off point for what might be, I mean, just projecting, like might be your next work. Which seemed like it seemed to expand your gestures into like a much more of a global kind of place. But maybe I'm overstating it.
I have no idea. I mean, the wall, you know, I did a small walk. I did a small mock-up in the studio, and then just did the wall right before the show opened just a couple weeks ago. So it's very, very new. But it was a joy to do. It felt like the obvious next step to do from these drawing paintings. And just to be clear, it's just, again, it's graphite on directly on the wall. I did it with my assistant, and we used big sticks with graphite chunks tied to the end of it, and it was just a pure joy. And I don't want to say I was expecting it to be stressful, because and like overly performative, and I expected to be self-conscious, but in the end it was like almost like, oh, this is the scale that's natural for this. Like it's like I finally found the right scale for these drawings, and it just felt really like it had to happen. And I mean, there's obviously like a drawing is like often seen as the basis of paintings, or so, like I thought, you know, funny to hang a painting on top of a giant drawing.
Right.
Even though my paintings aren't done from drawings, but there's drawings in them. So I've always been interested in like separating out the parts of a painting, and this seemed like the ultimate separating out a part of a painting from another. And then yeah.
It's such an epic work. I mean, and the fact that you know, your experience of it, I think, really gets expressed in it. It doesn't feel like, it feels like it was just done, like all at once, like all at once, and it just has a wonderful feeling of like inevitability.
Thanks. Yeah.
I think that
it did feel inevitable. It was like, you know, the paintings were just like, yeah, it was like the right scale. I don't know. It's like, oh, I finally found my scale. That's what it felt like. I hope, you know. Yeah. And this is 30 feet by 15 feet.
It's an amazing tour de force of a technical tour de force, but it sounds like it was just coming from, you know, a place of finding that rather than performing it.
Yeah. Thanks.
Well, so thank you so much, Keltie. This has been wonderful. I really appreciate your patience with all my questions and all of your insight into your own work. Sometimes I know that's difficult, you know, you have to talk about your own work. The work itself should kind of be enough, but so thank you for this. And I'm going to hand it over to the question and answer section. And thank you, everybody, for coming, and thank you, Keltie. I'm going to step back.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Keltie and Tom. That was wonderful. And if you're ready, I'll just move straight into questions that we have coming in the chat. And feel free to keep typing questions in while we do this. The first one will come from EJ Hauser. EJ, I'll ask you to turn your mic on.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Hey.
Hi, Keltie. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good.
I've really enjoyed you sharing your thoughts today about painting. Thank you so much for being here. So my question is, it seems like part of your process is about the pleasure of movement during the act of making. I'm calling this the artist's pleasure. And I also think that personally, your work makes for such athletic looking, which I really enjoy. I wanted to know, first of all, what you thought about this, and would you share more about your title, Feeling, at Mitchell, Innes and Nash?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, basically, I do think my paintings come from my previous life as an athlete, I guess. And I do think I'm more comfortable at like a larger, more full body movement than like a fine detail. And the pleasure of movement, that's a really good, I haven't heard anyone actually say that, but I like that. I mean,
of course, like it comes from, I think, my own experience in the studio, which is like during this super dark time, I felt like thinking about very, I don't know, kind of basic things. Like for me, the consistency of paint, or like kind of grounded sorts of ideas, things that didn't require me to ascribe meaning, or you know, like just like feeling. I guess that was kind of the combination of the question about your title, and then like the pleasure of making, because it was something that I found myself during the pandemic, which was, or I guess we're still in it, but like this that painting feels good. It feels good to move materials around, and I feel like that's kind of what you were talking about with the big drawing on the back wall at Mitchell, Innes and Nash.
Yeah, and I do think like just admitting pleasure is underrated as like an important thing to do and to I don't know, put into the world. I don't know. I think there is so much like, I don't know, trying to tamp down pleasure as like, and especially like everyday kind of pleasure. So
Yeah,
I guess that would kind of go with my whole like sunset like, you know, discussion. But so I do like, you know, I don't want to make hedonistic work, but I also want to, I don't know, like exemplify or like put out into the world like the importance of noticing your own pleasure. I don't know.
Something I've been thinking a lot about is back to this whole thing about like shame in painting, which let's end shame in painting like right away. But you know, nobody has a problem with like putting love into their cooking, and like talking about that relationship between like love into the cooking is love into the taste kind of thing. And so I think a lot about this as related to painting, you know, like I don't know where I'm really going with this, but your paintings are incredibly pleasurable to look at, and I feel like they must also, when they're not hard, also feel really pleasurable.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, Feeling, the title was just sort of you know, I felt like it's I don't know, like I do feel like more than ever the studio was like a repository for my various feelings throughout the year. And I think I think that comes out in the show. I have no idea, but it definitely felt like the show was like more than usual, like a literal like embodiment of that. So you know.
Well, thank you, Keltie.
Sure.
I look
Thank
forward to
you.
seeing you IRL
Yeah,
soon.
yeah, me too. One day.
All right. See you later.
See you.
Thanks, EJ. And thanks, Keltie. Our next question will come from Jonathan Payne. Jonathan, I'm asking you to turn on your mic right now.
Hey, thanks, Keltie, for your talk and for your work. My question is, can you talk about gesture in the work? Specifically curious about the depiction or representation of gestures versus
yeah.
the gesture that feels more naturalistic.
Yeah, yeah.
And like
Yeah.
thinking about naturalisticness of gesture as like gesture that's more evidence of your actual hand moving across canvas.
I mean, yeah. I mean, that's a good question. It's hard to talk about in general, but I would say that I am drawn to realness and to fakery. Like, and sometimes faking it leads to some very real interesting things, and and yet also like the and then sometimes repeating something over and over again, sometimes it gets better, and then sometimes it starts to feel empty and fake. It can all go both ways. I am interested in like paint as like a actual, like very truthful index of something that happened. And I'm also interested in its illusionistic qualities and optical qualities. And I feel like I'm trying to put those together and definitely create some confusion. And I don't know if confusion is the right word, but I think of like in terms of like music. I mean, I know like music, like when you put two different tones together, like sounds or instruments with different timbres together that have like the trumpet has a totally different feeling from the guitar, but like you put them together and the contrast make something like a third thing that's even better. I know that's corny to like refer to like start going to music when you can't. It's when you can't verbalize what you're trying to say. But as a visual artist, like we all end up doing it eventually. But that's what I think of it as, like different emotional timbres and the long truth to fakery, and you put them together, and maybe we can see a more holistic experience of what it means to try to tell the truth. There, that's the best I can do, I think. But it's a good question.
Thank you, Jonathan. Our next question will come from Jacob Stein. Jacob, you should be able to turn on your sound now.
Sound is on.
All good.
Hi. Hi,
Hey.
Keltie.
Hey, good to see you.
You too. This is such a pleasure to actually get to hear you talk about your work, not at an opening where everyone's buzzing around.
Yeah.
I was just curious because I feel like the frames and the painted frames have kind of gotten more and more prominence. I feel like I first saw them in your work when you had the raised dot structures, and I somewhat attached them to that work as you had the thicker painting bubbles or whatever they were. But I'm just curious what you think about the frames. How do you think about them? How do you, I saw you did some drawing on the ones that framed the drawing paintings, but sometimes they're really just kind of coated in a straight color. Are they like a decorative angle, to use the bad word, or like how do you think about it?
It's a good question. I'm gonna have a phone ring in, but it's a good question. I think they are not very logical at the moment. Can you guys hear me okay with this phone ringing? Okay. I originally was thinking of them as protective, like in a very functional way that the three-dimensional paintings needed. And there's something about being in the country that, I don't know, just that lets these like non-high modernist things seem more accessible. And I know, and I know that they are not necessary anymore, and in some ways they maybe contain the work too much. And there's something about like in a sort of New York-based modernism that we want our works to be autonomous, and if they relate to something outside of the work, they should like relate to other artworks in the work in the room, not with like their decorative containers. But I'm like really, I'm just drawn to the wrongness of them, and sort of, and they feel more possible here. And I know that they'll be really hard once I don't know, there's something about like, there's a folky quality to them that I just couldn't say no to once I got going on them. Yeah, I don't know, there's like a land element to it, a folky land quality that, and painting them, also, you know, as someone is just saying, I think about like, extends like, yeah, they're extending the painting outward, and yet also, I don't know, putting them in a box, like keeping them in their box. Like and yet they are part, I hand paint them, and these ones that became more and more simple too. It's true. The previous show, like in LA, had much more complex paintings on them. I don't know if that's the answer. I think honestly, they are like a to be determined element, you know, at the moment.
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering about how, where they're going, what's the attention to them. I find myself somewhat distracted by them sometimes, so I'm just trying to.
Yeah, I think they are, and I purposely on several of these paintings made them like as disjunctive as I could. I mean, that blue one is like really disjunctive. I mean, and it kind of, I mean, especially on top of a wall, it kind of beckons like, where does a painting end in a really literal way? That I think is a good question. Yeah.
They seem in dialogue with your wall.
Yeah. But yeah, it's definitely like something I'm working out. So.
Thanks, Jacob. Our next question will come from Ellen. I'm prompting you to turn on your mic now.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay. Hi, Keltie. Hi, it's Ellen Altest.
Oh, hey, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. It's been so nice to it's been so nice to hear you talk about your work. And I guess I was just like really wanted a little bit more information about your new process with the print. You kept talking about printing and the watercolor, and I thought maybe you could just like give us a little bit more a sense of what your process is with that. What new paintings.
Yeah, it's you know, I haven't done a whole lot with it, so it's I did do a series of watercolors that we didn't include in the slideshow. That was early on in the pandemic. That were all like made from like water, like using watercolor paper as almost like a plate to like to do, I guess you would call them monoprints. But you know, I'm not a printmaker, so I don't know exactly all the right lingo, but definitely is like coming from printmaking techniques. I, you know, I had like these Jeffrey Doak watercolors. I don't know if you know him, and like how he makes watercolor, but he makes it in these like vast, huge amounts, and it's extremely bright, and it's like impossible to make a gray out of. And because like,
Yeah.
they are colors that cannot be grayed. And I don't know, and there was something about this residual like mark. So like sometimes what I do is I like do like a whole piece of paper white, like one color, sandwich it to the other one, and then draw with my hands on the back of it. So it's kind of like blind drawing. And that blindness, I think, is I don't know. It's interesting. And it's things come out of it that I wouldn't I don't know. I wouldn't hope. I would never dream up, and I really am lacking control in it, and it's very frustrating. So it's kind of slow going, and so between that lack of control and the blindness, I don't know. It's been really fruitful, but I haven't made a ton of work with it. I made like 3 paintings and I don't know, a dozen watercolors. So it's pretty new.
That's super cool. Yeah, I can't wait to see it in person. Yeah, I guess I'm just like excited to see your show. So I just wanted to hear what they look like in person, like from, like what your process was. But yeah, congratulations. And thanks for answering my question.
Yeah, cool. I hope that helps. I don't know.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks.
Thanks, Ellen. Next, we'll go to G.E. Schwartz.
Hello, and thank you so much. And this conversation is just making the afternoon. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Keltie, and of course, Rail. I see your work is so transcendent, at least for me. That's, and ebullient in that sense, and euphoric in a way. And I guess I'm wondering if you're aiming to go between things or as opposed to going outside of them. I know that's very, but.
You mean sort of emotionally speaking or like spiritually speaking or something? Yeah, I think it's a very good question because I do talk a lot about in-betweenness. And however, I am aware that the end result of my work often is a very optimistic, energetic, ebullient or ecstatic, I think it might be the best word, place, and I think in the end that's who I am, and I can't really do anything other than that. That might be as simple as that you were just programmed with a certain kind of emotional state, and that's what you can put out there, or I think these means of contradiction make that in the end ecstatic and energetic and positive attitude less Pollyannish, or I don't know what I think they like bring it. My hope is that they're bringing it out of a cliche into like a more real place. So that in-betweenness, I think, gets us to the transcendent or ecstatic place.
Oh, thank you so very much.
Yeah, I hope. I think that's how it's working. I'm still trying to figure it out myself, but yeah.
That's in between then. That's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, G. For our final question and comments, we'll go to the Rail Zone publisher, Fong.
Thank you, Louis. Thank you, Keltie.
Thank you, Fong. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. This is fantastic. It's nice to hear you talk about the new show, the works in the new show. And I can't wait to go back, in fact, tomorrow afternoon. So I was in a meeting while listening to you. I trained myself to do a lot of things at the same time. Not recommended, but
yeah.
In congratulating you on this amazing show. And I wanted to sort of put together why I was listening to the Q&A question. oh, this is a poem for you, basically based on what you say,
Thank you.
except for one thing which I stole from Tom McGlynn. Here it is for Keltie, because I think you're going through amazing bravery. And it's just a beautiful chapter in your life too, Keltie. So this is for you. It's for Keltie. Trans confetti, dazzlement, grid, dot, end of day. Bilateral symmetry, spraying, trouting, end of day. Lit up artificiality, vocabulary, gestures. Trans punctuation as language, end of day. Toddling between the opposites. Closeness, openness at parallel radiations. Freeing of tyranny of lines, true, less true, end of day. Ecstatic being ecstatic, trans poetic remediation. That's the best I can do.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I will send it to you guys.
I love it. Please do. I really
I will.
appreciate it. Thank you.
I will. Yes. Thank you, Louis Block.
Thank you, Fong.
It's very kind of you, Fong. I really, yeah, I'm blushing here. So thank you.
Thanks, Keltie, for all of your generous answers to the questions. Today, we're going to get a double dose of poetry. We have a tradition of ending our community events with poems from poets. And today, I'm thrilled to welcome our Poet Laureate of the day, Serena Caffrey, to the stage. Transdisciplinary artist Serena Caffrey investigates time, longing, and land-body relationality. Embodiment is the creative hub of their practice, and her drawings, prints, text-based works, and collaborative experimental films synthesize movement-based research that ranges from performative to athletic. Together, these gestures question the impossibility of settler belonging, otherworldliness, and the sublime. Take it away, Serena.
Thanks so much, Louis, for that introduction, and Keltie and Tom for this amazing conversation. It was so wonderful seeing your work, Keltie, here today. And then more broadly, just thank you so much to the Brooklyn Rail. The new social environment has been such a lifeline for me throughout the pandemic. I've loved being here with you all as frequently as I can, and I'm really happy to be sharing this project today. And I want to acknowledge before I do that I'm calling in from Los Angeles, which is Tongva and Ahashiman lands here in so-called Southern California. So I'm going to be reading today from a project called New Moon Solstice Flower, which is an experimental essay featuring 40 drawings made over the course of 6 all-day performances throughout 2020 that began on the summer solstice, drawing a single, no worries, drawing a single flower from dawn to dusk, every new and full moon until I return to my day job. So thank you all so much for listening. When the moon is full, you draw a bud 7 times, begging it to open, thinking that it might, having the delusion that it might bloom. 3rd quarter and she is still sewn shut. Imagine how the petals take form inside a closed bud. I ask you because I cannot. I don't know the answer. I'm told in chrysalis, we become entirely undone. You know nothing of this place, nothing. Like a moth on a white cloth lit in the summer night, you came here because it was your instinct, but in doing so, you are becoming entirely undone. You weren't known to me before, and I have come to know you, have watched the ways in which your petals unfurl, the ways they crimp and fold, the way, without warning or prerequisite, they begin to dimple with black at their edges. From the flower, I learned that if you look too long, things stop making sense. This happened twice. You thought you were looking at something dead, but it had more to shrivel, could suck in its stomach even tighter, curling in on itself in the sun. If she tells you anything, the flower says, don't wait too long. If you do, you lose, lose, lose. With night, the gentle unraveling, the remembering of language, body, limbs. I still so belong to the flower. It is easy to forget. Human kneecaps, opposable thumbs, second toes longer than those beside them, a birthmark on my right thigh, fingernails I have forgotten to cut. So I ask again, just imagining, do the petals separate like puff pastry, like baklava, being solid once and pulling away from one another? Or do they form like sheets of ice along the bay, a tidal estuary, hundreds of layered shards folding on top of one another as the river slaps the shore? Or do these petals creep forward, forming one drop at a time, reaching, wrapping, spinning themselves out of goo, squeezing themselves into form, caves like the womb? Suddenly, you wish for these to be your primary concerns. What wisdom does the hibiscus hold to know it is a flower, to be a petal, a stamen, the color red, to wilt? The day keeps running forward. The wind turns her face west. This is your grace, that the wind will come in the afternoon. Then again, change. The way it gets to know the garden while you're away and unapologetically takes over. See, isn't this nice? All self-satisfied sounding. But when one night you go to the garden and find it suddenly dry and overgrown, the little yellow flowers of the weeds shooting up, going to seed, the bougainvillea like a firework blasting toward you so fast you can't focus on it, cut yourself on a branch you don't know to be there. How could you abandon the garden? Tomorrow is new moon. It will be strange to not be with your flower. It's already strange to not be with your flower. You haven't lit the candle. Baby, sweetheart, why haven't you lit the candle? Lighting it now, late, I ask. What wisdom does the flame possess to stand tall, to go white gold, then tangerine, then black? Now, in smoke so thick, flowers don't even open. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Serena. That was amazing. Everyone's clapping in their little boxes.
Thank you, Serena. That was beautiful.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Tom, and thank you, Keltie. That was an amazing conversation. And thanks for everyone for tuning in today and for asking questions in the chat. The Rail is celebrating its 20th anniversary as a nonprofit dedicated to providing free and accessible criticism and community events. And if you enjoyed today's event, please consider making a donation to keeping the Rail and our special projects free, relevant, and independent. And please join us Monday at 1 p.m. where we'll be having a conversation on Alice Neal with curators Kelly Baum and Randy Griffey, hosted by the Rail's own Jason Rosenfeld. We'll conclude with a poetry reading from Devin Goldring. I'll now give everyone the ability to turn on their microphones so you can say goodbye as you leave.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And Keltie.
Keltie.
Amazing.
Thanks, Keltie. That's good.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Keltie.
I'm going
Thank
to
you
see
so
the show tomorrow.
much.
I can't wait.
Thank you, Keltie.
Thank you, Serena, too.
Thank you,
Yeah.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
Kelly.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Serena.
everybody.
Thank you. Hey, Kathy. Hello.
Mom.
Lynn Crawford. G. Schwartz.
Good job.
Fred. Roxanne Steinberg.
Thank you.
Roxanne.
Love the
Thank
poem.
you, Serena.
Aw, thanks, Roxanne.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Bye-bye. Good